Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. And today we've got a great episode for you guys. You've seen a lot of him on our social media here recently. You've seen some of the incredible, impossible things he did at the meet last weekend, and then some things he even did beyond that at the marathon race the very next day. So guys, we are excited to bring you back once again on the show, Mr. Wade Smith. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you on here, man. So you've been on quite a wild ride here this last week.
Yeah, I had a powerlifting competition last weekend on Saturday, and then Matt texted me probably 2 weeks before, and he asked me if I wanted to run a partial marathon on the relay team, and he's the type of guy you just can't say no to.
Yeah, you got to be a little careful when you join our team, because even I got to be a little careful sometimes, because you never know what kind of text might come across asking you to run some crazy race or do some kind of crazy thing like that. But we'll dive into kind of why I did that and where I came from and all that. But yeah, you had a fantastic meet last weekend, it was just your second meet back, right? Since you'd had all those injuries.
That's my
third meet back.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was the first one you'd done in a while. I know that, and you were still working on that pec injury, bringing that back a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was an honor to be up there, man. It was really cool to watch you go into that mode, watch you compete. But I know it wasn't necessarily the easiest prep the whole time. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the prep for this meet was like, and where you came at it from, like, mindset perspective wise, what your approach to training was, and how you adapted to some of the challenges that came up?
Yeah. So I felt squat and deadlift pretty much the whole way through. When I was doing all my different variations, it went pretty good the whole time. And then 3 weeks out, I was doing good mornings with one of the guys from the gym. I worked up to, I think it was 425 on good mornings. And anyways, my adductor got a little strained, and I was dealing with that the last couple weeks. But
and you squat or you deadlift sumo most of the time, correct?
I can pull both.
Okay.
I can pull over 600 either way, so
okay.
It doesn't matter.
But is that what caused the abductor strain? Was deadlifting or the good mornings?
Yeah. We've been really hammering my hips so I can sit back in my squat more, and I'm able to use more posterior chain. So anyways, we worked up pretty heavy, and then anyways, I was I just felt like a little tweak, and then I played volleyball and stuff after, because I was hoping it'd push all that fluid out or whatever. But anyways, it was still kind of banged up, and then I had a lot of needling and cupping and massage therapy done the last 2 weeks before the meet, so I was able to so I'd be ready to roll.
Yeah.
But as far as the programming for the meet, I worked with a guy from up in Columbus. His name's Matt Winning. He posts a lot of his workouts, and depending on how beat up I am and other factors, I just kind of change it and move it as needed. That way that I make sure everything is still getting hit and I'm still able to train through and get good training sessions. But throughout the prep, I kept having trouble with my pec. I tore it in August, partial tear on the outside. I was doing some pin presses, and anyways, I had a big ball come up underneath my pec, and I've been dealing with it since then. But throughout the prep, it was kind of a nagging injury, and I haven't really got to handle any very big weight, so the fact that I hit 315, I was like, the other two went pretty good. This one is kind of to get my confidence back.
Yeah. So there was a lot coming into this meet, and I know you had some big numbers you were chasing for squat as well. Some numbers that you've been chasing for basically a whole lifetime now. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I went up, and the goal was to get 601. That's been my goal since September, because the last one I missed. I hit my opener, and then I missed the last two, even though I made a 2.5 kilo jump. And anyways, I was pretty disappointed. So ever since I've been down at Monsters, I've just been absolutely hammering everything super hard. And anyways, so I went up there, walked out my opener. I thought it was nice and clean. I made sure to, really dive bomb it and get depth and everything. Well, anyways, I got red lighted on the first one, and it felt easy enough where I was like, okay, I'll go up like 30 more pounds. So anyways, I took 5.7 your over out, and I got 2 white lights on it, and I was like, well, we didn't come up here to save any energy, so I was like, I'm going to send on this last one. So I called 601, and anyways, I took it down, and it stalled about 3 inches out of the hole, and it was an absolute dogfight trying to get it up.
See, that's one of the most impressive lifts I've seen, like face to face. And I talked to you a little bit about that after that lift, because you see it so often where people will, no matter what lift it's in, they'll come up out of the hole, or they'll press, or whatever it is they're doing, and they'll hit a sticking point. And you see it so many times where people hit that sticking point. Maybe they fight for a second, and then they just drop down and give it up. But it's very rare to see those instances where people actually hit that sticking point, keep pushing, keep fighting, keep going, even just like a centimeter. And as you keep just fighting under that tension, you're not going to get it every time. But if you just switch off that message that can pop up in your brain of, oh, I hit a sticking point, I can't lift this. Just ignore that, turn that off, and just change the messaging. And I think this is a practice, something you got to work on over time. I don't think it's just something that comes to you immediately. But if you can change that messaging in your brain to be like, I'm just going to keep fighting for 1 more inch. Can I last 1 second longer? And you'll be surprised how many scenarios, when you approach it with that kind of mindset and that kind of perspective, how many times you can actually power through and complete the lift just by staying calm and fighting under the pressure of it. And that was really cool to witness in you, because like you said, you got red lighted, or you quote unquote failed your first squat, your very first opening attempt lift of the entire meet. And I know that can be just an absolutely mind-numbing place to be in. So how do you take us back to that lift really quick? You go up, you get all prepped for this meet. You've been working for it for months, and you go out, you squat. Looked to me like a good rep, looked to a lot of people like a good rep, but they did red light you on it. So what's going through your head as soon as you re-rack that? And how do you keep your mind from kind of spinning out of control in those moments?
Well, there's a guy that went after me. You don't really see a lot of people anymore squat super wide. So they have a little bit of trouble judging the hip creases and stuff, because they're not used to people using a real wide base and, leaning a little bit more forward. Well, after the next guy went, they gave him all green lights, and he hit his lift, and I was like, okay. So I was like, maybe they're just getting used to judging or whatever. Anyways, I was like, I know I was deep enough. Was 100% deep enough. I was like, I know I can handle more, because, a couple weeks ago, when I walked out that 595, I felt like I could have done 2 reps with it. I knew it was there, so I was just like, whatever happens, and just keep pushing. And then that second one, I stood up with it, and I sunk it so much. And it really, it was a tiny bit of a grind, and then I got to that third one, and it's like, it's all or nothing. So I just channeled every bit of rage and all my energy into it, and it eventually came up, and I was like, I probably could have done a little bit more, but that was pretty close to what the highest RPE or percentage I probably could have hit.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, it was right there. It hit that sticking point, and you sat there for a while. So did it like bother you? Did your head start going out of control? Did you start getting like anxious or nervous like when you read like that first squat? Was there any of that sort of battle, or were you just kind of, you knew you had it there and you were able to just kind of shrug it off? Because it seemed, from our perspective, it seemed like you just turned that around super quick.
Yeah.
And that you were just able to go in the zone and say, okay, I know what happened. I'm going to fix it for next time.
Yeah. Well, I haven't, the past 2 competitions I had before this, I missed my opener last year in April, and anyways, I was like super worried about it, and I was like freaking out and stuff. So I stuck with the same weight, and then I hit it, and then I hit 520. And anyways, I was in my head. I know I could have handled more that day. And then whenever I competed this year in September, the other 2, they told me they probably wouldn't call me good. Mm-hmm. After I got done with the lift, if I got to that same level or whatever. And anyways, so I'm pretty sure I missed my opener. I kept it the same, hit that, and then my third one I missed and didn't do very well. But through that happening, and also meditating and stuff, I was able to just kind of like keep my cool and just kind of pick up and move on from it. I mean, I was a little bit like, you know when you hit it and you're like, I'm pretty sure I was where I was supposed to be. Just like your 440 and April, I was like, man, that looked good. Like I was judging your hip creases. So anyways, I kind of had just enough confidence to just be like, it'd be all right in the end.
Yeah. And I think that's a good mindset to approach it, because it's easy to get freaked out in those moments, but truthfully, it's like, what does it change? Missing your first attempt is really no different from missing, your third attempt. Like it's either a good lift or it's a not good lift. And it's just this thing of trusting in the process, trusting in the work you put in, and analyzing, okay, what happened there? Even if it was, in everybody else's eyes, a good lift, the judges have the power in this scenario. So you kind of have to go based on who's making calls each day as to whether or not you're going to get the lift. And it's just literally a game of adjusting and adapting to whatever they need. So when you saw that first attempt was red lighted, were you making an effort on the next 2 to go deeper? Yeah. Or did you change? Okay.
Yeah, I was making an effort to go a little bit deeper. I mean, like another half inch or something, because I knew I was right there. But one of the big things for me is throughout the entire prep, I only missed, I think, 1 lift the whole time, and that was the bench the last week. So like the entire way through, whenever you're programming, you're trying to make sure that you get success that breeds confidence, and then confidence that breeds success. So if you go through and you make sure you have, like, you're, obviously pushing close to the line, but you don't want to push too far to where you're missing constantly, because then you're getting in your head. If you're hitting almost every single lift during training and you're not having any trouble, when you go in and take that weight out, you're like, I know I got this. I've done it in training this many times. And
yeah, and that's where, just the repetition, the process, the whole build up into these competitions. There's I think it's the Navy SEALs that have this adage that I think they say in war, but really in war, in competition, in crisis, and whatever it is, they say you don't rise to the occasion, but you fall to the level of your training. And I always kind of liked that perspective, because it makes the day-to-day very important. Right. It makes the day-to-day really the only thing that's important, because you can hope that in the moment you'll pull something out of nowhere and make something crazy happen. But really, if you're not setting yourself up in that consistent effort every single day, when the occasion comes, you don't have a lot of control. Yeah, you may get some kind of crazy Hail Mary out of nowhere, but you also may not.
Right.
You take a lot more control by focusing onto the day to day. And like you said, you know, in that situation, you've handled that situation so many times in training that it was able to this time around just be kind of second nature to you. And you just fell to the level of that training. And the training was at such a high level that it allowed you to still come out, turn that situation around, and perform at your highest potential that day.
Right. Well, with the SEAL people, their main thing is they have gotten to some blue on blue, which if you don't know what that is, that means you get into another part of your own crew where they're in
like friendly fire.
Yeah, friendly fire, where they end up. It's only happened a couple or a few times throughout our history since we had the SEALs and the Marines, but they try and make sure that doesn't happen, because it happened. I think I read in a book like 10 or 15 years ago when we were over in Iraq and real heavy over there. But all that training is to make sure, because it's like easy to say like, oh, you should know, like you should be able to do that, but being able to actually be in that moment and still make the right decisions.
Yeah. It's just making perfection an instinct essentially,
right?
Which is something I would imagine you have to do for that level of operation. But I think you can take that same mindset and apply it to anything you chase in life. Like if you can make perfection the standard in training, or you know, if you at least chase that, you're going to fall close to it,
right?
And then everything else becomes, you do that enough times, it becomes instinct. And when it becomes instinct, then you step on the platform, you're not having to think about, am I deep enough, am I wide enough, am I engaging at the right time, am I throwing my butt back, you know, am I keeping my head up? You don't have to think about any of that stuff, because it's just instinctual to you at that point. Yeah. You just go out there, focus on the moment, and it allows you to sit in that pressure, under that weight when you hit those sticking points, and it allows you to focus entirely on just gaining that next inch. And I think that opens up a lot of real estate in your mind to generate as much mental capacity towards that fight as possible, which I think is an important thing. And that's what I think we got to witness in you on Saturday at that third squat attempt. And this was something, like, it's just like burned into my mind, the image of this, because it was one of those meets where it was a really nice facility. They had a big giant setup for it and everything, but the meet itself, there wasn't like a ton of energy. There wasn't a lot of people screaming or anything like that. And you were really the first person to kind of wake the crowd up a little bit. And it was with this squat. And it's just because people have an inherent draw to, like, when somebody does something impossible or something that they don't think should happen, we as humans just have an inherent draw toward that. Like it's just there, you know? And so people see you hit that sticking point. I think most people in the room expected you to just drop back down and, you know, give up on the lift, but you just kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And man, I wish I had a timer for how long you were under that bar. If I can when I find the video, I'll go back and track it, but you were fighting for a while. Like, I bet that whole lift from the time you lifted the bar off, I bet that thing took maybe a full minute, like, which is a long time to be under 600 pounds of weight, you know? Yeah. So it was just amazing to see. But I want you to kind of lay out for us where your mind goes in prepping for that lift, this weight that you've been training for literally your whole life since you got into powerlifting. Where does your mind go as you approach that weight, as you get under, you lift it off, and as you come down, and then you hit that sticking point? What's keeping you going? What's keeping you fighting? What's your mindset like in that moment?
Well, in that particular moment, as soon as I hit that sticking point, I just felt like I tapped into like a sense of rage and just completely released it, because I thought of all the times that I've failed and, you know, brought up some of the old past stuff that was, you know, kind of burned into my mind and still bothers me and stuff like that. And I just was like, if I don't, I have to get it. Like, gun to my head, I have to get it, is pretty much what I was thinking the whole time. And anyways, I felt it start to creep up and creep up and creep up, and I was like, I got about, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches from lockout, and then I was like, I knew 100% that it was there. But I've thought about that, squatting that weight since the last meet, and I've thought pretty much every single day about it. I mean, I woke up the morning of, and I was like, I know it's gonna happen. And anyways, I was just outside pacing in the parking lot, just trying to get the jitters out and everything. Because as soon as I woke up, my adrenaline was spiked. I was sweating. I was ready to roll already.
Yeah. You never sleep good the night before competition if you're chasing.
Especially if your dad really snores a lot when you take him with you.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh, but yeah, it was so cool. And then you rack that weight, and we've got some good pictures, some good video of like your reaction to that lift. You rack that weight, and you come out and you were just losing your mind, screaming. The whole crowd's going crazy. And it was the first time they'd woken up. What's that feeling like? You rack that bar, you get out from under the pressure. Try to I know words can't describe it, but if you had to, how would you describe that feeling of going through that fight and ultimately coming out successful? You actually got 3 whites on that lift.
Right.
So by the end of it, you had all 3 judges' approval on your lift.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about most people, but for me, it was probably one of the biggest senses of accomplishment I've probably ever felt in my life. And anyways, whenever I locked it up, I just was, in between like all the work I put in for, these 2 years trying to get back from all these injuries that I had, and then I was able to squat that. It just was a complete release of like, all the effort, and then also all the preparation, and the rage and the accomplishment all just kind of came out. It was just like a really rewarding feeling, because it's like, now I'm hitting some decent numbers. Now how far can I really push it? Because before it was like, I'm a sub-novice lifter. Now it's like, I feel like I have more potential than I thought I did 2 months ago before I hit that.
Yeah. And I would imagine, would you say that kind of confidence and that sense of accomplishment, does that carry over to other areas of your life, even totally outside of lifting?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because like a lot of people, you'll see them walking with their head down and not like carrying themselves very well. Well, I've been recently reading like Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules of Life or whatever. Well, the first one is have good confidence, carry yourself high, have confidence, because more people are going to be drawn to you if you're having that. Well, after I did hit that, I just, I felt like just a little bit more confidence just because of that. And it definitely kind of like leaks over into the other parts of my life. And then actually, not even as soon as we were getting ready to leave the competition and get to the hotel for the marathon, I was already looking at the national records for our federation at our place to see what it is to try beating them. And then anyways, I was like, well, I'm pretty close, and I can get there by December is, the goal. So as soon as I got out of it, I was like, I gotta find something, or I gotta find something else to train for and get ready for.
Heck yeah, man. I love it. And it's funny you bring up Jordan Peterson, because that's actually where a lot of our mindset in this regard comes from. We had the opportunity to see him speak a couple years back now. And one of the things that he said in that lecture that I've just never gotten out of my brain since then is he said, the best way to become more confident is to become more competent. And it makes so much sense, because there's so many people out there these days that have a severe lack of confidence. They just, don't think they're worth a lot, don't think they're capable of a lot, and they don't hold themselves in very high regard. And it's a heartbreaking thing, really, that, people that we've gotten to a point in society that so many people have such little self-confidence, and I don't know that the blame can go on any one person. There's a lot of different factors that play into society now. But at the end of the day, what I think Dr. Peterson argues is that it's kind of, I guess, the same as the cookie jar effect that David Goggins talks about. Anytime you can look at an accomplishment you've made, something you had to work hard for, something maybe you didn't even think you were capable of doing, but then you worked for it, you went through the process, and you achieved it. Anytime you can look at that, it's going to instill some small level of like pride within you. And each time you do that, you stack something else on. It will bring a little bit more and more and more of that pride and that feeling of confidence, and knowing that, well, hey, this thing I'm facing right now is really hard. I don't know if I can do it, but I've done stuff like this before. Like, I've done something I didn't think I could do before. Look at all these things I've done, and I know that I came out of those okay. So I'll probably come out of this okay. And that's very similar to our process. We talk about it like being impossible. To me, it used to be like a once every couple years thing to put myself in that kind of mindset I have to go to chase some of the things I chase. And after enough times, it's become something that I can turn on and off pretty easily. It's not a place I go to every day by any means, but it just becomes something that, I guess, in a sense, you develop even a little bit more courage to go into that situation of something that you don't think you should be able to do, or something that you shouldn't be able to do, quote unquote. But by doing it enough times, you develop this pattern of, that if you put yourself in the right spot mentally, you put in the work physically, you get yourself in a good spot emotionally, when you set these events up surrounding it, you can put yourself in that state of knowing and having the confidence to believe that, hey, there's no reason I should be able to do this, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to give it everything I've got and then some anyway. And I know that when I put myself in this state, these things happen. And so it just allows you to trust in yourself and trust in the work you've put in, and trust in the process of whether it's the lift or the competition or the race or the challenge. But I think it's a great point that by becoming more competent as a human being in anything, it will make you more confident in everything.
Right.
So,
and also you've been, I think you did it every competition last year at Monsters, and you've been prepping for the marathon.
Yeah, I actually just did August of last year. That was my first legitimate competition ever in powerlifting. Yeah. We did some in college where we just like make our own and stuff and just run like mock meets because we didn't have money to pay for fees or anything like that. Yeah. It was just like we were having fun with it, So we'd do that in college with our group of powerlifting people. But that was my first legitimate ever competition was Monsters of last year in August of last year in Monsters. And then I did the December comp, and then I did the April comp just now. So that was my third one. Yeah. So it's been a blast. I've had a ton of fun with it. And I'm not planning on doing August this year at the moment, but I know myself, and I know that I will end up doing it. So
he's definitely doing the December one with us, though.
Yeah, we're gonna have
pretty much
because the whole gym's doing December, so I will 100% be there for December, and very likely for August as well. But so we get out of squats, go through bench. And I know you weren't like crazy happy with your numbers at bench, but again, coming out of the injuries you've come out of, it was still a pretty impressive feat. How'd things feel? What were your thoughts on the bench process?
Pretty much my pecs just hurt all the time since I heard it. And even that morning when I was taking the weights, I was like, man, it just doesn't feel right, because before I heard it, I felt probably the most in rhythm I've felt on bench. And anyways, for the past, 8 or 9 months since I heard it, I've had that feeling. I'm like, I'm worried about in my head it ripping off the bone and stuff. Well, I was listening to Dave Tate, and he was talking about after his pec completely tore off the bone, and he got surgery, and then he came to Westside, and he started benching, kept hearing all this popping and stuff, and it was just all the scar tissue in his pec. But every competition he went to after, he imagined that it was gonna smash him in the face and like, you know, kill him or whatever, and anyways he'd get it off of him as quickly as possible. So anyways, I was kind of thinking some of those similar thoughts at that time, because I moved up a weight class and I opened with 287, or which is not great. That's what I did last year, my first comp, which I was hoping I'd be, you know, up closer to 4. And anyways, it moved, you know, really easily. Didn't have any struggle with it. And then I went to 315, and it moved really easily. So I took like a 26-pound jump or something like that, and it was like 341. Anyways, I hit that sticking point, and I was trying to find everything in my power to drive through, and I just I couldn't find any more. I don't know if it was just because my mind was shutting off because I was worried about hurting itself or what, but I mean, the weight didn't feel heavy. It just didn't go up. So I don't know if something was blocking me from finishing that attempt, because I know I should have hit that.
Yeah. It's always a tough thing, and you still had a good fight under it. So it wasn't that you just pushed off, hit a sticking point, and dropped it back down. Like you fought under that for a while, and it was like when it started moving back down, it was slow until the spotters caught it. So you never at any point stopped fighting until they'd re-racked the bar. But you know, sometimes you can go into that situation, you can give everything you got, and even with every single preparation, everything you can put into it, and then a lot more, you know, it doesn't always end up the way you want it to. But I think it's those moments where we actually grow the most, because I guarantee you the next competition, you're going to be nonstop thinking about that 340 bench and you're going to be out to smash that. You're going to be out for revenge. You're going to be out for unfinished business with that. Just knowing that, like, having that feeling of just not completing what you set out to do. It's hard to even call it a failure, but just knowing that you didn't hit what you set out to do, and it's going to drive you to put in so much more consistent training over these next however many months, so that you can go into the next meet and just absolutely crush it. And in my perspective, you know, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about October 15th, 2023, that marathon. And I knew going into it that I had no business even starting or showing up to that start line, just with all of the health issues I'd had, how anemic I was going into it. I had higher muscle breakdown levels than somebody having a heart attack when I started the race. And just, there were so many reasons, but I knew that had got myself in good enough shape that I could at least go out and do something.
Did it anyways.
Well, I didn't finish it though, was the thing. I got to mile 18 and I stopped at mile 18 because it started being a health concern. And that's the thing, you know, it's like, I think sometimes the entire battle is just showing up to give everything you can give.
Right. Well, I think for whenever you fail, I mean, you have that confidence, which gives you the ability to dream about it and be able to do it. But the failures are where you kind of go back to the drawing board, and, you know, whenever you're sitting there and you're like, you know, completely breathless and can't move after you finish a workout or after you're running, that's what keeps pushing you, because you're like, I can't let that ever happen again, because I hate that feeling.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I consider that whole year like a massive success all in all, but for me personally, my like personal mission of hitting that marathon did not happen. You know, I knew I could show up and put everything I had, and I knew I'd get further than I'd ever gotten before, and I still had like some glimmer of hope that I'd be able to make the full marathon happen. But I got to mile 18, which I'd never gone more than 14 before, so I made it 4 miles further than that. And it just, I probably could have pushed myself into like dangerous, like going to the ER level territory. But with the eyes that were on that race that day, that's not the message I wanted to send to people personally. So we backed off, and like you said, though, like you regroup, you go back to the drawing board, and every single day since then, I think about that moment, and I think about how I'm going to do absolutely freaking anything in my power to make sure that does not happen again.
Right.
And it's like, it has driven my training and my approach to everything, even like the business and Team Impossible here. It's driven everything so much harder, because I know that I can give more in this preparatory process for it. I knew that I could do more as far as figuring out those health issues. I knew I could do more as far as getting my body in a better position to be able to handle that race. And so it's driven every aspect of my life, because whenever I'm thinking about, not recording that podcast, not doing that edit, not making that post, it's like I think about that moment of when I was at mile 18 and I called it and I threw in the towel. And it's like, it's like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And so it's actually become a very positive, driving, motivating thing, because it's like I know that I need to do everything in my capability to put myself in a position where that doesn't happen. But it's I don't know. I hate that failure has such a negative connotation to it, because I find it really motivating, and a lot of times if you can approach it from the right mindset.
Yeah.
You see people who they fail and they want to place blame on everybody else, whether it's the judges or their coach or their training partners or whatever else. You see those kind of people, and then you also see people who just let it eat them alive and let it just destroy them, honestly. But then I think you can have, again, with enough like practice in this situation, you can have failure be a very positive, you can take a very positive approach to it, because when you start to take and this goes back to when we were talking about like falling to the level of your training, when you take your personal confidence, your personal pride, and your personal success in the day-to-day effort that you're putting in at the highest level, when you get to that competition, it's like it almost, the outcome still matters, but your self-worth isn't dependent on that outcome.
Right.
And in a way, I've gotten it to a point now that like when I fail something, I almost get even more excited about it than when I do hit something, or when I succeed at something, because I know how much drive that's going to give me over the next several months. Like when I failed that 440 in April there, it's like, now it's like, I think about that almost every day too. And it's like, now it's like, I've got it just rooted in my head of like opening at 440 next April and just like burying it so hard that there's not even a question, Yeah. And it's like, that just gives me so much more drive than any like successful lift that I've ever had. And maybe that's something that just like crossed wires something wrong in my brain, but it really does. I get so much fuel, so much drive, so much motivation from those moments. But so the bench, didn't end up going exactly how you wanted it to, but really, as we say, like, bench is really just the break between squat and deadlift. So
yeah.
So then you're able to get back to the important stuff, and you got a big deadlift goal ahead of you. And I know you'd had that abductor strain you were talking about, so you really didn't get a chance to go full all out on deadlift and training, did you, in this prep?
I took 601 like 4 weeks out or something, and anyways, it felt pretty good. I got a little rocked forward, and it didn't feel quite as quick as it should have, but it still moved pretty decent. But after the bench, the thing was, I've been chasing these numbers, but the people have been helping me out a lot too. So like looking over at Matt and Pete and also one of the new guys to Team Impossible, Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, look at you guys. I was like, well, you know, they invested this time in me. Like, you can't dilly dally. You still got work to do, and everything's gonna, you know, be all right. Even if you miss one lift, it's not gonna change the amount of effort they put into you or anything like that. So for deadlift, you know, I was even 30 minutes before I was getting ready to go out, I didn't know if I was pulling sumo or conventional because I wasn't sure how great my adductor felt. And then anyways, I talked with Matt and Pete, and I was like, I think I'm just going to go for it. It doesn't feel too bad. So anyways, I went back to the back room, did some back extensions to get the hamstrings warmed up, and then I pulled 2 reds on the bar, 3 reds, and then 4 reds, and I opened at 550, and I was like, man, I should have put bands on this because it pulled so freaking easy. And then the rep that I struggled with in training, the 601, I called it up for my second attempt, and anyways, I locked it out, and I was like, man, this feels like butter. And then ever since I got done with the last competition, I was supposed to compete at 275, and then between all the eating and all the training, I just was over by 10 or 15 pounds, something like that. And I was like, we had this goal when I started prep to pull 640, so I was like, I'm gonna call that for my last one. And then I locked it out, and I was, you know, standing there, I was like, man, I still had more left, but it's a good feeling to know you have more left than, you know, not to have enough that particular day, which that was, as far as a meat PR, that was a 60-pound PR, and then the squat was like a 65 or 70-pound PR or something like that.
Yeah.
And the bench, you know, it's just what it was. But regroup and go back to the drawing board on it.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, man. And it really did. It seemed like you had no limit on deadlift. It was like everything they put on the bar just flew at the exact same speed. And normally a 40-pound jump between your second and third attempt is like massive. Yeah. Like normally that's like unthinkable for most people. And so you were already like really going out there testing the waters by just calling 640, and then it flew as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, it's just crazy to think where you could have gone, you know, 661 or even higher potentially. But, you know, I don't think it was that you were underestimating your potential. I think that you were just totally locked in and tuned in, and your body was ready to deadlift that day for whatever reason. But
yeah,
it is cool in the sense that it opens your mind up to a whole new world of potential for your next meet in December here.
Right. Yeah, the goal for December, I wish I would have called my second attempt a little bit higher than what I did. That way the third one I could have went ahead and tried 661. But the goal for December is I'm trying to pull 699.
No, you're not.
Well, that's what it is. I'm planning on pulling 700. For the next one.
You're going to pull 700.
Yeah. Well, kilos are just...
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter
so
though. You can do 1 kilo increments. You'll pull 701 or 702. But I'm not going to let you walk up there and pull 699.
Well, it's 699.9.
Okay, so we'll go up the next one to 702. Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it and that's probably not something you would have considered for December had this meet not gone the way it did as far as deadlift's concerned.
Yeah, probably not. But,
yeah. So it's just crazy to think that I think, you know, because when you first started, would you have ever guessed that you'd be training to deadlift 700 pounds?
No, because, you know, last year, so obviously Matt knows something about it. he busted his abdominal wall completely open. He's got a 6 or 8 inch incision on his belly, and it took him forever to get his abdomen trained up enough to where he could actually, squat, bench, and deadlift, and just participate in everyday life as he once did. But I had a couple hernia surgeries, and I couldn't sit up out of bed without it throbbing and hurting all the time. So like the fact that I went from not be able, like, where my family had to help me get out of bed after I had hernia surgery, I had 2 of them. So the second time was really kind of humiliating for me. So whenever I was thinking of that, I was like, I don't know if I'll actually be able to do that again, because like my best I pulled during high school was like it was close to 500 or whatever, but I was like a sophomore, and I got hurt, and then had kind of a snowball effect, so I just kind of stayed pretty well constant on my weight. It didn't really go up or down the whole time. Then I got surgery. Of course, I was in slings out in the building, still doing curls with the other arm, and doing, bench and doing rows without moving my other one as much as I could. But I really didn't think at the time that I'd be able to. And then by the time April rolled around last year in 23, I was like, well, I just felt like I was starting to get to a point where I didn't have to worry as much, which I didn't know at the time, like how much farther I could possibly go, because I thought I laid it all out there that day. This last one, whenever that happened, I was just like, I can't believe I couldn't get out of bed 2 years ago, and now I'm, to this point.
And that's an amazing feeling. And I think the best part about that feeling is, and I actually, it's funny, I literally was talking about this on the podcast that just released yesterday. When you know where you've come from, and then you see those moments and you have that realization of like, I never thought I would be here. Yeah. When you see that journey in yourself, and your brain becomes open to that potential that you have inherently, you start to see that in everyone around you. You see that same potential in everyone around you. And so it becomes this like driving, motivating force to help those other people realize that same potential in whatever it is they're chasing. And I think that's just one of the coolest feelings you could ever experience. And I think that came out a little bit in the next day yeah. Where we, so it was it like 2 weeks before your meet? I texted you.
Yeah.
It was like 2 weeks before his meet. He's getting prepped for this big giant meet. He's got giant numbers he's throwing up. And for those of you who have never done a powerlifting meet before, it like you're ruined for like a week after that meet. And it's not even just like physically, at least for me anyway, it's always more of like a CNS thing. You just have so much weight and so much pressure on your back that your whole nervous system just becomes fried. And you're like, at least for me, I'll get like super emotional, and I can like barely stand out of bed and like things like that. But the thought of doing anything the day after a meet is just like insanity, let alone like going out to run a leg of a marathon relay. But we'd been planning this race, and it worked out perfect that we could go up to Akron, see your meet, and then the next day on Sunday go over and do this race. And we were doing this race because a bunch of members of Team Impossible were going to be up there doing it. But as you guys know, Natalie and her son, who fought cancer in that city 5 years earlier, were going to be running the final leg for us. And so we wanted to give them that opportunity to cross the finish line of a marathon in the same city they fought cancer 5 years earlier. And Austin, unfortunately, was not able to make it. He had to be out of town that weekend. So I was like going through my like list in my brain, and I was like, who can I call up to do who's like just crazy enough on like no notice to be able to go out and run the leg of a marathon. And then I was thinking about the meet, and I was like, well, I know Wade will do it. And it's because, though, I've had the, fortune to get close enough to you and know how your brain works. And you are a rare type of person that does not easily place limitations on yourself. Whether it's in something you're good at and you've got a lot of experience in, like powerlifting, or whether it's something that you maybe don't have a lot of experience with yet, like running, distance running.
Yeah. Well, I used to play basketball. And run a little bit of track. I had some sort of
sort of foundation. Yeah.
I just was, only like 25 pounds heavier than I was when I was running all the time.
It makes a difference, man.
It really does.
Each pound, and we calculated it at one point because I was still pretty heavy. I was like, when I started marathon training, I was very close to 300 pounds, like very close. Yeah. October of 22. And then I didn't get down near as low as I wanted to be, but I think race day I was like 268, something like that. And then like now this morning I just hit down into the 250s, which I've not been that since I got out of college. And I'm a much leaner 250 than I was last time, because I had no muscle mass then. But it makes a wild difference. We added it up. Like if I get down to 230, which is my goal for the marathon this year, versus the 300 pounds that I was when I started marathon training, it adds up to like 1.7 million pounds less that I'll have to move during that race. That's a lot of weight. I mean, if you consider you're moving, 200 or what would have been 300 pounds every step of a marathon, and you take 50,000 steps in a marathon, like it's crazy how it adds up. But
mind you, I weighed in at 292. So I'm pretty close to that 300 pound mark, but I don't know. I was curious though, like what specific instance gave you the impression that I don't really put limitations on what I'm trying to do that made you text me that day? I've been curious about it.
That's a good question. It's not something I'd thought of. So I think there's a couple parts to it. I think one, I don't have a lot of natural like inherent skills, but I think one kind of inherent skill I have is I can generally read people very well. And I've just always been very in tune with like what drives, what motivates, like what certain people like, what certain people don't like, just kind of like who they are, what drives them, what kind of motivates them as a person. And sometimes I'll even have like instinctual, like, I don't know what you call them, like pulses or something of like, and one thing I would say, like one time that happened is when we met at that like random party last summer that just kind of randomly, and obviously the one thing that caught my mind was you were wearing a West Side shirt, but there's a lot of people that wear West Side shirts and not all of them train necessarily. Like it doesn't necessarily mean just because you're wearing a West Side shirt that you're like a hardcore powerlifter. But it's just like, it was one of those moments where I had this just like this urge. It's like my brain focused and I'm like, I need to talk to this person. That'll happen to me occasionally. It actually happened to me at your meet up there last weekend. I met a dude up there that we were able to generate a conversation with. He might come on the podcast and things like that, but it just happens sometimes. So I think that's part of it. But I think the other part is, I think the first time that I realized that about you was when I saw the video of your meet from last September or August, when you went for the 600 attempt and you ended up like passing out during the lift. Like you literally, like you were not going to give up on that lift. You were going to go until your body failed. And that's not always the right call in every situation, but when you see somebody being willing to take it that far, that they're not going to accept any sort of like physical limitation. They're just going to go for it, and then I think training with you throughout the rest of this year, you're one of the people that's actually always pushing me to go for higher numbers than I would even call myself, whether it's just in training day to day or whether it's in competition. And that's something that I really have a lot of respect for, because there's not a lot of people, like, usually I'm pushing beyond what people recommend to me. And so to see somebody that's like, not that you're pushing me to unrealistic, like totally unrealistic expectations, but you're willing to like push me even a little bit further than I would push myself. That's not something that I've encountered a lot. And so that's a pretty cool thing that I've got a lot of respect for. And I think a lot of my lifts and a lot of my training have gotten better because, you know, I've gotten to train with guys like you and Pete and everybody else up there at the Monsters crew. So when I sent that text, I sent it because I knew you would say yes, or at least that I would be able to talk you into it. And I also knew that it would be another instance, because I wasn't just trying to like guilt you into it so that we could have another runner for my own like selfish purposes. I knew that what it would hopefully be able to give you to go to a full out powerlifting meet one day. And I knew you weren't going to save an ounce of energy for the race. Like, you're going to give everything in that powerlifting meet, but then to go do that and then to turn right around the very next day and go run 4 miles in a marathon relay. And then you probably walked another 3 or 4 on top of that the rest of the day. I knew that would open your mind up again to a new idea of your own potential. And I know with the goals you're chasing in life and powerlifting and everything else, you're going to have as much of that mindset as you can, like being open to as much potential as you can. And it's something I knew you could do, but it's probably not something you would have ever guessed before that you could have done yourself. And so I wanted you to be able to see that within yourself, that, you know, there are these things out there that like you wouldn't have even guessed you'd be able to do, that you can make happen. And I think you made it happen really well too. Yeah. You had really good times on that race.
Yeah, well, the last mile was good. The rest of it was kind of speed walking and getting the lactic acid and everything out. But I appreciate you saying that. It definitely means a lot to me. But yeah, as far as like the limitations and stuff, you don't realize, like, so you can push yourself when you're comfortable with something. So like with weightlifting, I'm like, I know I will physically die to get that weight. Like, I don't care if I'm dead 10 minutes after and I pick up that weight. It doesn't matter to me. I will do whatever it takes to do that. But whenever you get into something like running, where it's like, well, you know, I've been running all my life. Like, it's not like something that you really think about a lot as far as like pushing you mentally. But, you know, whenever you have the combination of, you know, you get done with that meet, you're real sore and stuff, and then you're like, everything's hurting and you're trying to get your stride out and everything like that, then your mind is like, it's dug back to yesterday whenever I did that third attempt on deadlift and squat. It was just running through my mind. And that last mile, I was 100% fueled by Leonard Skinnerd on it. I was listening to Freebird just running full
As any
blast.
good American would be.
Yeah. Well, I texted Matt because I was still speed walking. I was like, is the checkpoint at 12 miles or 9.1? Because somebody told me 12, and I was like, it's gonna make a difference in what I'm kicking. Yeah. So anyways, he's like 9.1, and I could see the 8 mile marker like was a few hundred yards out. And anyways, I was like, as soon as I get across that sign, I was like, I am just gonna give it everything I got for this mile. I was like, I don't care if there's hills or if it's downhill or if there's a bunch of people. I was like, I'm gonna push it as hard as I can. And actually, like I mentioned, I'm 25 pounds heavier, and I'm absolutely booking it. My best mile I ever had was when I was like, like 245, and I ran like a 650. And when I was 260, I ran like close to a 7-minute mile. Well, I'm 25 pounds heavier, and anyways, I was just checking out of curiosity, and I crossed in like 7 minutes and 10 seconds. And it's like, man, I couldn't even hardly
That's
move
a pretty
around
quick
this morning.
mile.
Like, I was trying to get my safety pins unclipped that morning, but from holding that weight in the deadlift, I couldn't get my hands to hardly function, and Matt had to put my both my front and my back bib on for me. And anyways, I got the soreness out and straightened it out, and I was like, I didn't realize that was there.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy how much, and that's what I think those are some of the coolest moments, when you realize, like, even in the moments you feel broke and you feel like you got nothing left to give, how much really is left in the tank.
Yeah.
And I think running, so it's interesting because powerlifting and running, people ask me all the time, like, why I would ever do both at the same time, because from a physical perspective, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you'll never go as far as you could in either sport while you're doing them both at the same time. But for me, everything I do is a mental game, because that's where my hardest battles in life were. And so to me, powerlifting and endurance running are the same thing from a mental perspective. They're the same extreme on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so I think they take you to the same place mentally, but the difference is powerlifting hyper concentrates that all into 60 seconds.
Right.
Whereas running spreads it out over hours.
Yeah.
And hours and hours. And you just get to a point where you have to make a conscious decision every waking second while you're running to keep going forward and to keep pushing harder. And it's not something and you have to push when there is literally no end in sight, And so I think I learn different things from each, and I grow different ways in each. There is certainly one that I enjoy a lot more than the other.
Yeah.
But I think they both give the same growth from different perspectives. But that's one thing I've constantly been blown away with in both, but especially in endurance running, is just how much more you have left, even when you feel completely broken. Because in that marathon, I felt completely broken at mile 6. And I put up a post where I recorded myself, and I'm half hysterical at this point, because it's mile 6. I feel completely broken, and I have 20 miles left to go in that race. I was just it was the most hysterical moment. I was just kind of crazy laughing at that point. But then it's I still go I didn't make it the 20 miles, but I still went another 12 after those 6 miles when I already felt completely broken. And so and the only reason I was able to push myself to that point is because, again, when you get enough repetitions of going to that place and knowing that even when you feel broken, you still have infinitely more to give, it allows you to have confidence in yourself that you can keep pushing through that.
Right.
And I think that's how you made that 600-pound squat, how you're able to stay calm and fight under that. And I think, again, like you said, it's how you were able to run that race the very next day. You look at what you just did the day before, what you've done throughout your whole life, and you're able to trust in the process and trust in your body and trust in yourself and know that you can go to that place. And I think that's a really cool thing. Yeah.
Well, you see a lot of powerlifters that they're actually just powerlifters. Now that is it's been my number one love for a long time, is anything strength training wise. But whenever I'm at college, or even during the summer and stuff, I don't like it, but I play soccer. I love playing basketball and volleyball and football. So I still try to stay, even though I'm pushing all these numbers, I still try to stay relatively athletic, even though I'm getting a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. I still try to keep my 31-inch vertical, and I still try to keep close to my 5-second 40. I'll test it sometimes just to make sure I'm still right there.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really important. I've never felt better in powerlifting than when I'm coming off of my like marathon training blocks, and I just have this like cardio conditioning, and I feel like I can just train for hours without getting tired. And I feel like I can go through a competition, like not without getting tired, but like without gassing out during the competition, which you will see people do that. You'll see them get through squat and bench, and then they have no energy for deadlift. Yeah. And it can be devastating. So I think just having some of that cross training and some level of balance actually can be very helpful and very advantageous in competition. But again, for me, it's the mental edge that it gives me, because physically I've got no advantages in either sport. Yeah. So I rely entirely on the mental edge.
As soon as I handed off to Matt, he, well, I didn't know at the time, but we were all getting gathered up because Leo's mom let him go full blast at the end, and he pushed himself as hard as he could. Well, Matt came off of his leg of the marathon, and anyways, we were waiting down by the finish line for Leo, and he was like, yeah, I had prosthetic problems like the whole time. He's like, I was pulling padding out and adjusting. I was like, the sight of like people that have two legs walking by or running by you, and you're just over there fucking with your prosthetic or whatever, just was like, it was so amusing to me. I was just like hysterical laughing.
It is hilarious. And it's like, I try to like not try to like hide, but I try to like get out of the way and like do it quickly, because people like get so uncomfortable when they see me like pull off and I'm like taking my leg off and stuff. And I mean, I appreciate the concern, I get it, but they just assume that like I'm dying or something sometimes. Yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just making a pit stop's what I usually tell them. And again, I appreciate the concern, but it is funny. People just like it can be mortifying for people to see that, and to me, it's like second nature at this point. I don't even remember what it's like to have two legs. Sometimes I will like notice people like get up out of a chair or something like that, and I'll be like, man, or I'll notice my wife just like get out of bed in the morning. I'm like, what's it like to just like stand up out of bed without having to put a leg on or something?
Yeah, actually my family met Matt last weekend, and anyways, my grandma was like, do you ever feel bad for him? I was like, no, he's like one of the most capable individuals I know. I'm like, why would you feel bad for him?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, he's uplifting everybody. He's raising money. He's doing marathons. I mean, like, you can't really like feel down for somebody because they're missing away. He's got all this success, way he's training for all this stuff and being successful in life.
Well, and I think for me, because there was a point in life where I felt really bad for myself, and I kind of drowned that in a lot of alcohol and not good stuff. And I think that the switch came, and it's like, now it's like, I'm just so thankful for what I do have. It's a perspective of like, and I think anybody can get into this perspective. It's something we've talked about before. It's like what we call the victim mentality versus the hero's mentality.
Right.
And it's that idea of like, anybody at any situation in life can look at their life, and you can either focus on all the things you don't have, or you can focus on all the things you do have, so and all the things you do get to do.
The glass half empty, or
the glass half it's literally full, that,
whichever way you look at it.
That perspective, an adage, as old as time. And we all have, I think, inherent leanings in either direction, but it's also trainable. Like, you can, and I know that it's trainable because I've trained myself to change in that manner. Like, now I'm like such a like positively optimistic person that it's like almost it almost gets to be like a bad thing sometimes. Not quite, but like, I run right on that edge there. But there's, that's something I had to train myself to do, because there's certainly been a time where I was trapped in a very, very negative mindset and just looking at everything I'd lost. Yeah. And whatever you choose to focus on, it's got to be a habit that you build, an instinct that you build daily with daily practice. And by focusing on what you do have and the things you've got going for you and the things that are good in your life, build yourself up and you build others around you up in so much more of a powerful way. And it becomes so much more driving, so much more motivating. And it actually gives you control over more situations in your life. Because when you've got that victim's mentality and you're looking at the things you don't have, and then you're placing blame on other people for that, then you have no control to fix the situation.
Yeah, you're already lost.
Yeah. But when you accept responsibility for it and you say, hey, this may not even be my fault, but it's still my responsibility to fix it. And you say, look at all these tools I have at my disposal, because as hard as it is to go through life with one leg, and I mean, it's really not that bad, but as hard as it is, or as hard as it felt back then, it's infinitely harder to go through life with no legs,
Yeah.
or there's people with no legs and no arms,
Yeah.
there's always I hate saying there's always somebody with worse out
off.
there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just an entirely subjective outside opinion. So I hate saying it, but it does allow you to adopt that mindset of being grateful for what you do have left and what you do have that you can work with. And once you take that responsibility, it allows you to change your entire life and the lives of everybody around you. And, again, it's just something that takes daily practice, daily habits. I mean, it took me 6 years to get kind of where I am now. It's not a quick thing, but it's I think one of the best processes you can ever go through if you are one of those people that struggle with feeling like, if you're somebody that's kind of stuck in that mindset of feeling like nothing's going right for me, I can't make anything happen, I don't have these things that other people have, things like that. I think really that's the key to it.
Yeah. I think, in all honesty, a lot of that stuff is kind of like, it feels like it's related to religious base too, because it's not a sin to question if God's listening and stuff like that, but to keep full belief all the time is really a big thing. And I feel like if you're not spiritually sound, you're not mentally sound, and then it just keeps trailing on in your life, and you're like, well, I don't feel like God loves me, and then you're like, well, my life sucks. You got to find the positives in your life. I feel that everyone's got some sort of positive in their life. And then you have to find out what you're happy doing, because if you're working a shitty office job and you're not happy every day you go into work, I mean, it's leaking over into your marriage and stuff. And Matt does exactly what he intends on doing, and he seems like he's having a pretty happy life, and he's happy with what he's doing. So it's not like he's going to work and he hates it. He's picking things that make him happy, and he's staying sound in all these areas, and that's just enhances his life even more.
I appreciate that, man. That's absolutely what I try to do. It's what you were just saying. There's actually it's funny. It's what we just talked about on the podcast from the other night, and it's just that idea that your purpose, your happiness, and I love that you talked about your faith in whatever it is in. It's not something that you just find. It's something that you create and build for yourself. And it's something that you have to work at every single day. It's not something that will ever just come to you and all of a sudden your whole life's different and filled with all of these wonderful things and this great purpose and this great passion. It's something that you have to work at building every single day. And you're always moving the needle in one direction or the other. And every day you get to wake up and you get to choose. But I do think you can build a certain level of momentum in either direction. And that's a very positive, motivating thing, because when you get that needle pushed in the direction of success and things going good for you and things happening for you and things, and making accomplishments in every aspect of your life, when you kind of push the needle in that direction hard enough and for long enough, you build up a certain level of momentum. And I think it just comes from having built that passion, that purpose, that faith, that when you build that up as your instinct, again, falling to the level of your training, falling to the level of your daily approach to life and everything in it, when that's your default, then when your default becomes that everything is going, like everything you're chasing is in line with your passion, everything you're building is in line with your purpose, and you've got faith in yourself and your potential to be able to go out and achieve that, then you almost can't help but succeed, I think, in that kind of situation. And that's what I see in you. And what's really cool about it is that, and this is another one of those things I hate saying, but it's just kind of the truth of the matter. Like you're young, like you have a lot of years left ahead of you, both competitively in powerlifting and just in life to live. But the mentality that you already have, the perspective that you already have, the maturity that you have, and the discipline and approach to everything you're chasing, like you're looking 10 plus years ahead when you're 21 years old. And that's a very rare thing to find. Like I did not have that when I was your age at all. And because you're doing that, you are going to be infinitely successful in life because you're thinking that far ahead, because that time's going to go so quick. Like it's going to go so quick. And since you've got that focus on it now, you're not just saying like, oh, I'm going to live for this right now. And I'm just, I'm maybe when I'm older, I'll get into like training and that kind of stuff. No, you're planning for it right now for when you're 15 years from now. And I think that's such a cool thing. And that's like a really professional, high level mindset that is going to take you very far. And I think whatever you choose to chase in life.
I appreciate that a lot. It really means a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's true, man. So dude, I appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate you giving us the performance you did last weekend, because, and this is something I told Austin on the phone when I called him up to chat with him about how the weekend went and everything. Last weekend for me was just a perfect realignment of exactly why we do everything we do. And it's to be able to witness people in pursuit of the impossible and see people be impossible in the face of it. And you gave that to us. Natalie and Leo gave that to us. And like every single person we encountered that weekend accomplished that in some way, shape, or form. We had one other team member that was there. I don't think you got to meet her, but she ran the half marathon while she's battling mono right now. And it's like, it's just crazy to be able to do that.
I think I did.
Oh, did you? Okay. Maybe you did when you were with Jordan's group, but it's crazy to even fathom that, and I'm not saying she did that because of us necessarily, but it's still an honor to witness that and to be able to share those opportunities with people. That's literally why we do everything we do. And so to have a full weekend of that, it just like recharges the batteries and it makes you drive even harder forward. So I appreciate you letting us be a part of your competition. I appreciate you joining us in the marathon, and I'm hoping to have you join us again here in October.
Yeah, for the Columbus Marathon. Well, that's really the big thing about getting prepared for these meets. Once you get done, you kind of have like a postpartum depression.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you don't have something else to do.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I trained for 5 months, even if it's off season and on season, you've been pushing all that time, and now you have like nothing. But now that I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up doing probably that half marathon up there. And then I'll do the meet in December. And I was like, if I feel pretty good about, the events and stuff, I might also do a strongman event that's in the beginning of November. So,
yeah.
But having that sort of stuff to, just keep having goals to get better at in life and everything. Even if I get completely kicked and I'm like second to last in the 13.1 mile. Who
it doesn't
cares?
matter.
It's for me anyways.
Yeah. And that's what I love about endurance running is it really can be such an individualized sport. You certainly see people get crazy competitive about it, but at least for I think our perspective as powerlifters, it becomes a very individual thing. Right. But I do like that you said that about always have something you're chasing. Always have that next thing, because that's something that I know is very true about myself. If I don't have something I'm chasing on a daily basis, that is when I slip into very bad habits, very bad practices, very bad mindsets. And I've got to have a goal, a competition, whatever it is. I've got to have something I'm constantly working towards. And that's what I did, like with the marathon last year. Like when I failed it and ducked out at mile 18, like the next day I signed up for the December meet, because I knew like if I did not have something to immediately refocus on, immediately chase, and like a new way to go out and face some sort of impossible situation, that I was going to spiral out of control, and it's just, you learn those things about yourself when you go through it. But I think that's a really good point you bring up and recognize there. But appreciate you coming on, man. What is, I know we talked about the marathon a little bit. We talked about the December meet. Is there anything else you want people to know, or people could follow along and watch for in the next coming months or years?
I think this summer I'm going to end up purchasing, probably not a great camera. And anyways, I think I'm going to start putting out a little bit more, content about like the workouts and stuff, and kind of like talking you guys through it, and also be posting a little bit more to kind of show what I'm doing life and whatnot. Because if somebody is really wanting to do something but they're scared to reach out to anybody else, I want to be that person for them that they can talk to, and if they have any questions or anything. If anybody wants to ask me any questions anyways, find me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. You can ask any questions you want about strength sports or just anything that we've talked about on here. I'd really like it whenever people are interested in what we're doing, or trying to push themselves to do the same stuff we are.
Absolutely, man. We'll put all those links to social media and everything down in the comments there, so people can jump on and follow you. And guys, as always, the number one thing we ask for every episode is that if this episode impacted you in some way, or somebody else in your life that you think this episode could have impact on, help them in any way, please share it with them. We're live on all audio platforms, and we do have full video episodes on YouTube. You can find us there at Impossible Performance. So please share this episode with somebody else. It helps us achieve our number one goal and the vision that we read at the end of every podcast, which is to build this global culture of everybody being in pursuit of the impossible within their own life and everything they're chasing. So you guys can help be a part of our mission, our vision, and everything we're doing by just sharing these episodes. And if you want to comment or subscribe to our show so you get updates when we release new episodes, or just let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of. We do read and respond to all of our comments ourselves. So we love hearing input from you guys, and we love seeing what you love about what we're doing here. You can find us online at www.impossibleperformance.com. We have a lot of resources on our website there. We also have a link to our shop. We've got the new spring line out. I'm actually wearing one of the t-shirts from it today. It's called Cardinal Black. It's this beautiful black-red kind of color. But all those shirt sales help support what we're doing here with the podcast and helping to push this mission forward. So jump on, check out some of that stuff. It's all very high quality, and we make sure we're very picky about the training gear we use, the stuff we wear, everything. Austin and I are very picky people, so we're very like anal about making sure we get everything just right and at a very high quality. So you guys can definitely trust in that. But otherwise, Follow us on social media. I'm at impossible.performance on Instagram, impossible_performance on TikTok. And then we're on Twitter, Threads as well. Austin is at Austin_strength. You can see some of the stuff he's doing there. But guys, we just appreciate you being along for the ride and listening to these episodes. You are truly why we do everything what we do. And if you guys ever have questions, comments, you need to reach out, or you just want to learn more about any of our particular mindsets or anything we're invested in here, please reach out to us on any of those channels. We're always happy to help. But thank you again for listening to this episode. And we want to close in just reminding ourselves that everything we are, everything we choose to chase in life, everything we pursue, it all comes down to that daily effort you put in. And not just the effort, but where your attention in that effort is directed. You know, I heard a quote recently, because we always talk about time being the most valuable resource, because it's the thing that we all have equal of in a day. And, you know, we never know how much of it any of us have in our lifetimes. But I heard somebody say that there's something even more important to that, and that's your attention. And at first it confused me a little bit because I didn't understand. I was like, well, how is your attention more important than your time? And he made the argument that somebody who sits on the couch for 8 hours a day watching TV is getting less done and moving in less of a direction than somebody who works really hard in one direction for an hour. And that really kind of struck me pretty hard because it's absolutely true. Not that there's anything wrong with sitting down watching TV and taking a break and enjoying time with your family, but make sure that everything you're doing in life, everything you're doing day to day, is very intentional with your attention. So whether it's sitting down to watch a movie with your family and enjoy quality time with them, be intentional with that attention. Make sure you're fully invested with them in that time you're giving them. And then when you get right back to business or training or whatever else it is, be very intentional with that time and make sure that you're 100% fully invested in what you're doing in that moment. And I think when we build our patterns and our habits and our belief and our faith, as Wade had talked about, in that manner towards what it is our passion and our purpose is in life, then, like we said earlier, your success will become inevitable. So thank you guys for being a part of everything we're doing at Impossible Performance. We, as always, have big things in the work coming for the future, because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, be impossible.